Hey everyone, it's David Barnett from davidcbarnett.com, and we're back again with another Holiday Chat 2019 edition. And I have a caller on the line from the UK. We've got Ali, and Ali's been in the UK now for quite some time. Ali, when did you say you moved to the UK?
It's early 2008.
2008. So you've been there for over a
Yeah.
decade now.
Yeah.
And you have an idea for a business that you'd like to grow into a franchise operation, and you want to get my feedback. Why don't you explain to everyone what the concept is?
Right. Okay. What I found in UK at the moment is like there is normal traditional estate agency where you go to. I mean, they sell and let your property. And other, if you have a business, then you have to go to other companies or other outlet where they like business transfer agent.
Hmm.
The mechanism of both are same, like in going out, taking pictures, evaluate the business or the property, and come back to the office and put them to marketing channel, whatever they use. Because I born and grown up in Saudi Arabia, I have a few friends and investors there. Due to the climate change in Middle East generally, they are interested to invest in UK,
Hmm.
either in real estate or in business. What my plan is like having this franchise system where those franchisee would be able to bring some leads, and we're going to qualify those leads and marry them with the investor who we have on board. Of course, within the time, this should the investor should increase. We could be opening for any investor, but to start with, I will start with my own circle. Then marry those leads with investor with the deals, whatever deals they are. If someone looking for uh, hotel chain, because I have few friends, they are interested to invest in hotel business, not the property itself. So on personal level, I managed to secure like 3 hotels for them.
Hmm.
So I think like there is a room for online kind of online estate agency or online agency where that agency can cover property, buy, sell lands as well, selling lands, than
So,
normal businesses.
so are you okay? So you want to create a brokerage business where you're selling businesses, but also real estate properties. Are you thinking any specific kinds of real estate, such as commercial
Commercial,
investment,
commercial,
or
commercial,
all of it?
commercial, commercial and investment. Yeah,
Okay, so just commercial and investment.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So there is such a model that exists right now in the US.
Right,
One of the big business brokerage franchise names there also does
right.
commercial real estate. So so you might want to check them out.
What
It's
they
called
called?
it's called Murphy.
Murphy. Okay.
Yeah. So, and I personally know of a couple of business brokers who also do commercial real estate on the side. And
But do they do the business as well? Like, I mean, because sometimes in business you just have uh, like a restaurant, for example. The restaurant owner will not own that building.
mm-hmm.
He is running that business for like he have a lease of 10, 20 years, whatever. And for some time, for some reason, he would like to sell his restaurant. So we'll be selling. I mean, the restaurant business will not have a property as asset or the real
Right.
estate.
Before I get into some examples of where I've seen
Yeah.
this work,
Okay.
let's talk more about why it's so separate.
Okay.
Um, so in the introduction, you said that business brokerages and estate agencies have the same process,
Yeah.
where they get a listing, they evaluate the property or the business, they go take pictures, and then they advertise it for sale and do marketing. So
Yeah.
that is a little bit true, but there are some very distinct differences between the two. And the biggest one is confidentiality. So a proper business brokerage will list a business for sale and not advertise that the business is for sale. So
Right.
they won't promote the fact that, Ali's corner restaurant is for sale. What they'll say is that there is a family dining restaurant available for sale in the greater Manchester area
Yeah.
with sales of a certain amount and a cash flow of a certain amount.
Yeah, that's
And
right. Yeah.
because the owner of the restaurant does not want it to become publicly known
Yep.
that it's for sale, whereas the owner of a commercial property that wants to sell the building wants everyone to know that it's for sale,
That's right.
right? And it's because the value of the cash flow of the business is not going to be impacted by the news that the building is for sale, because if it's a commercial property and they have tenants, those tenants are all in leases. If the building is sold to somebody else, the leases carry on, so they're not affected. The general public's not affected. In the case of a business, if people find out that a business is for sale, employees become concerned about whether or not the business is actually failing or not. They might start to seek other jobs. Suppliers become concerned that maybe there's something wrong with the business and they won't get paid. Customers are concerned that deliveries won't be made or warranties won't be honored by a new owner. So all kinds of trouble that comes from people knowing that a business is for sale.
Yeah.
And the method of valuation, with commercial properties, it's tied to the income,
Yeah.
capitalization rates based on the cash flow of the business, et cetera. And what is very nice about commercial real estate evaluation, and I know a couple of commercial property appraisers that I have done business with for many years, they have access to information that is miles beyond what business evaluators have.
Mm.
Because oftentimes when a property is sold, the transaction value becomes part of a public database. So those appraisers can see what buildings actually sold for, know what the square footage of those buildings are. They can make calculations. They can start to see what's happening in a market as far as how much things are selling by square foot or what they're selling for as in relation to the cash flow, so they can determine their cap rates and things like this. Whereas with businesses, a lot of the times you're dealing with imperfect information, and so you
Mm.
sometimes have to rely more on the experience of the evaluator. um, I the culture of the two kinds of enterprises are very different. In a business brokerage, everyone is very aware that everything is secret all the time.
Yeah.
Whereas in a state agency, you don't have that culture necessarily.
Mm.
Information is floating around, and people want to promote things. The here's where I've seen these two things come together very successfully, and I'm not very informed at all about what Murphy's is doing, and I haven't spoken to any Murphy's office owners or anything like that. I just
Right.
know from a trade show I attended in Atlanta years ago that they promoted themselves as a business brokerage with a real estate component. And here's where this works well together. Business brokers often have very slow deal flow, and it's a very up and down kind of cash flow,
That's right.
right? And so I actually did a report a few weeks ago on the main YouTube channel where I talked about the IBBA did a survey of their brokers, and the average respondent did less than one deal in the quarter.
Wow.
So, and I can tell you from my own experience owning a business brokerage, as soon as you get some listings and you start to try to sell them, if you're a small office, if you're an individual broker, for sure, selling 4, 5, 6 businesses in the course of a year it is maybe typical. I
Right.
sold more than that, but I also took on business listings that were quite small that most brokers would turn their nose up at. And
Mm.
the reason I took on the little ones is because I knew I needed as many deals as possible for cash flow.
Yeah.
And the business brokers that dabble in commercial, a lot of what they do is leasing agent work.
Yeah.
So they'll go and they'll show office space or retail space to business people, and those types of deals get done with much greater frequency. If somebody wants to come to your town and they need to open an office and they want to be open in 2 months, it means at some point in this month they're going to sign a lease somewhere. And
Well,
so if
that's
they,
right. Yeah.
right. So if they're working with you and you help them sign that lease, then you're going to be paying some kind of commission. And that's where I've seen people do this together. And the purpose of doing the commercial stuff is to create some kind of cash flow
Yeah.
to help pay the bills and everything while you're waiting for the business brokerage deals to close, which typically have very large commissions because they're so difficult to put together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Right.
so, you know,
Where I can get a hold of like the real estate business, because I run the house, so I know the in out and the procedure for it, like the manual and procedure and forms and all this stuff. And in terms for business brokerage, because I try to dig down, there is not many like selling uh, those type of manuals, the procedures.
oh, yes.
So I can put all this package together in terms of
Yeah.
franchise
Well,
system.
well, there is. It's just that there's nobody really doing it in the UK. So I've got
Right.
a
Okay.
friend. I've got a friend over there named Clinton Lee who's trying to establish some sort of organization or body nationally to be an association for transfer agents.
Right.
But he's just begun. It hasn't taken off. You have to
Yeah.
look to the other side of the ocean. So,
Right.
um, when I was attending the IBBA functions years ago, when I was a member, when I had my brokerage office open, there were
Yeah.
people there from Europe and the UK.
Yeah.
So, what what you would have to do is you would have to look to an organization like that for the training and development, and then adapt. And it would be very easy to adapt certain small details for the UK market.
Right. There is anything available in the market like full package kind of from from A to Z forms and procedures and marketing materials, whatever. So I just take that, bump that with the real estate business, and have full package there for the business. Or
Well, the IBBA teaches a certification program on how to be a business broker. So they actually have classes on topics like evaluation and things like this. There are other providers out there who sell kits of information for people that
yeah.
want to get into this business. One of the big ones is called Business Brokerage Press,
Right.
BBP Inc. for short. I think their website might be bbpinc.com. And
Okay.
they're in the north. I think they're in New England. They're in the northeast somewhere of the United States, but they have
Right.
all kinds of books and manuals and full packages of documentation about how to run
Right.
a business brokerage business.
Right. Okay. Okay. What's the most like obstacles could be with combining these two together, these two models?
The the obstacle would be maintaining the proper conduct on the business brokerage side. So protecting the confidentiality and things like that. Um, the I know plenty of commercial realtors, and they will take on people under them, almost like an apprentice kind of role, where
Yeah.
someone will learn under them, and it takes you know a year or more for that person to really become good and knowledgeable. In business brokerage, it can take even longer. It can take a year for someone just to become competent, but
Mm.
still need the input of someone more experienced. And this is why you know networks and franchise systems provide a value.
Yeah.
When I had my office, I was under the Sunbelt Business Brokers franchise, and one of the biggest things it gave to me was the ability to pick up the phone, and call other people in other offices, so that I could just have a conversation amongst colleagues, or to ask them specific questions. Within Canada, I was able to, with a few phone calls, find out if somebody in the network had recently done business on a similar business that I was looking at. So I could call them up and get their feedback on what things happened that I should be aware of, and things like that.
Yeah.
And so that access to information was one of the most powerful reasons why you want to be connected in that kind of network. I know that within the world of business brokers, there are a lot of independent actors, and
That's right.
you know, a lot of them derive huge value from being in an organization like IBBA. because they'll
Right.
try to create their own friendships that they can leverage their own team, group of colleagues. It's very easy to meet people who are in other markets who are not really competitors, right? But
Yeah.
are open to sharing information. And so, you know, from the point of view of the idea of starting up a franchise business in the UK that does real estate and business brokerage, have you worked in one of these fields before?
Real estate, yes, and I did a few business acquisitions.
Hmm.
So the process, what I mean by process, like the usually, I mean, one of the nightmare is dealing with uh, business transfer agent. Is like I don't know what's the problem there, but it's like this is what I experienced, that the agent usually is either make the deal or kill the deal. In my scenario,
Hmm.
uh, 80% is kill the deal. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is what I experienced, and this is what is motivate me to have kind of our own system where we can bypass those lazy agents and provide to the market professional and cost-effective service there, where we can make the franchisee happy, we can make the investor happy, and we're serving the market as well.
Yeah. The, you know, one, other people who, there's other big franchise brands, like we mentioned Murphy, there's Sunbelt, and there's one called Transworld. And these
Yeah,
are big names, of course, in North America. Um, and that's probably part of their mission too. How can we make
right.
this work better? And
Yeah,
I can tell you that for all the training and all of the networking and all of the information that those franchise companies are able to deliver to individuals who sign up with them, the service that the business owner gets and the buyers get is still completely related to the individual they're dealing with in the local field,
that's right.
right?
Good.
So even like within Sunbelt, we were supposed to cooperate with each other. So if I had a buyer who said he was looking for a certain kind of business and he was willing to relocate, I was supposed to be able to introduce him to other opportunities in the Sunbelt network in other offices.
That's
And,
right. Yeah.
and sometimes those other office owners were really open to that and very welcoming of me, trying to help. And other times they didn't want to deal with me at all. They're like, no,
Yeah.
I'll do it on my own. I want all the commission.
What if we created our like kind of software or a database, central database, where is not a choice for the individual franchisee to select which how to deal with the inquiries. Like, okay, automatically all this will generate. It's like there is a call center. They receive the inquiry and they collect all the database. The franchisee, his job is just basic is like promote and network rather than this way of thinking something here like it came to my head is like what type of problems the franchisee will be facing, because my goal is uh, the franchisee should be end of the day make money. Otherwise, I mean,
Yeah.
6 months or
Well,
one year down the line, it's like it says I'm
well,
not
the
happy to
the
proceed.
difficulty is that we're not selling a product off the shelf. We're selling something that's very complex, and
That's
that
right.
seller has a relationship with the broker that listed the business for sale.
Yeah.
And so that particular person is the choke point of information and
Yeah. Yeah.
communication. And
That's right.
so the listing agent has to be on board with working with another agent. And most business brokerage is done under exclusive contracts, which means that um, let me back up a bit. In most of the world, it's done under exclusive contracts, which means that there's only ever going to be one broker between the buyer and the seller,
Yeah.
except that is not the norm in Florida. So
Right.
Florida has kind of evolved a little bit differently than most other markets. It really does copy more so the real estate model, where buyers and sellers both have agents, and there is sort of a central clearing place where almost an MLS of businesses, and they do work with each other much more frequently because that's the norm there. I've had many clients in Florida on the buy side, and and we still run into, regardless of this better cooperative system that they have going, we might be able to say, is that it doesn't matter how cooperative or how good the buyer's agent is. If the broker that listed the business doesn't know what they're doing, and they put a bunch of inaccurate and incorrect information into the systems,
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
you still don't sell any businesses.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So it's like basically like inspiring and having some motivation to the individual there to close the deal.
Yeah. And so in North America, it's a very spaced out, very large area. And so business brokerages here tend to be very oriented towards geographies. So you have an office in a certain city, and you're willing to list and sell any business in that area that meets your criteria. And what I have noticed is that in the UK, it's because the country geographically is much smaller.
Yeah.
What has happened is that there are many more transfer agents which have developed silos by specific industry.
Right.
So you'd have one transfer agent who maybe is a specialist at certain kinds of manufacturing, and he lists businesses all over the country.
Right.
And
Yeah,
then everyone
that's right.
who wants that type of business just goes, they know that there are a few names who are the big names in selling those businesses, right?
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
So what do you think? Like, there is a room for newcomer there?
I think there's always a role for innovation. The challenge is always the same, and that is getting through to the business owners and having them see value in what you're doing differently. Business brokerage is a two-part sales cycle. The first sale that the transfer agent has to make, and I use transfer agent for those who are listening who don't know. In the UK, business brokers are called business transfer agents. But the first sale that has to be made is that the transfer agent has to convince the business owner that they are the one that's going to be able to do a good job selling the business. And that sale can take a year or more.
Yeah.
And then once you've got the listing, then it becomes about trying to find that buyer. And what's interesting is that and this is one of the conflicts that brokers get caught in all the time. If you're competing with other transfer agents to get the listing, there's a temptation to tell the business owner things they want to hear, like that their business is worth a lot of money, that their business is going to be easily sold. And then once you've secured the listing, now you actually have to try to find a buyer who sees the value and wants to buy it. And what if you told the seller it's worth more than it truly is?
Yeah.
Right. And so then you have to alter the expectations of the seller so that you can make the deal palatable to a buyer. And
Because what they always they blame the market always, like especially with the state agents. This will happen with us a few times. They will come value the house, let's say for £500,000, and then the real value is 300 something. They will say, it's worth 500. They hook you up with the contract. You pay the commission, whatever, agreed, sign the contract. Now you are bound to them. A few weeks later, they will say to you, okay, the market is slow now. You have to reduce your price.
Yeah. And so the difference is with a property, these things happen over a couple of weeks. And with a business, we could be stretching it out for months or years. Yeah.
Right.
One of the first businesses I listed for sale was a fried chicken franchise business restaurant.
Right.
And it took me months to get the listing, and then it took me 3 years to sell it.
Wow.
Yeah. And in that particular case, it didn't take a long time to sell it because it was a poor business at all. It was a fantastic business. The difficulty was that the gentleman owned the restaurant and the property, and he would not consider offers to sell the business alone. And so the challenge there is finding someone who not only had the resources to make an offer on the business, but also the resources to buy the building at the same time.
Yeah.
And so by putting two different assets together into one transaction, we had to wait until we found someone who had enough money for the down payments and was able to give the bankers confidence. And we, after it took a long time, but we found a gentleman who used to be a franchisee of another restaurant operation. And so the banks loved that because they knew that he knew how to run a restaurant within a franchise system. So he was able to get more credit from the bank than other people, and he also brought more money to the table. But it took 3 years to find the guy.
Yeah. Right. So it's like the main challenge will be having the business owner on board
Mm-hmm.
there. Okay.
And if you can demonstrate that you offer something different, so you mentioned about creating a database of investors. So
Yeah,
you,
I could say like if you don't get within 30 days or 14 days your offer, commission refunded. They will get the offer, but the problem is every investor have to go through the books, and we don't know like if they like that business or not.
well, the challenge
That
is
could be
that
dodgy as well. Like, okay, I can send my friend sending his offer.
well, here's the challenge is that if you list
Yeah,
a restaurant for sale, you can be
yeah,
certain that people will want to buy it because there's a
yeah,
lot of people looking for that kind of business.
that's right.
You could list for sale a very profitable business in a certain niche industry,
Yeah.
and it might sit for 8 months before anyone who is willing to consider that type of business comes along.
If I have, let's say I have a listing of restaurant, can I sell that business to a competitor and it will not look like I breach a contract of confidentiality there?
Well, in the actual functioning of these deals, what happens is a buyer comes along, and let's say a competitor comes along and says, "Oh, I see you have a restaurant listed for sale,"
Yeah,
and you say, "Yes, I do," and then you send them the non-disclosure agreement, or they come to your office and they fill one in. And then what I would do is I call the business owner who's listed for sale, and I
yeah,
say, "Look, I've gotten an inquiry from this guy. Do you want me to deal with him?"
right. Okay.
And sometimes the business owner will say, "No, I know that guy. I don't trust him. He's just
Yeah,
trying to
yeah,
figure out who's for sale,
that's
for other
right. Yeah,
reasons." And this is what makes the market so inefficient, is that every part of the business brokerage world is still based on interactions between people, and all of the technology that's come about, really all it's done is replace the need for the classified section of the newspaper. When I started back in when I got into this back in 2007, 2008, there
uh-huh,
were still businesses being listed for sale in the newspaper under a heading
wow,
called business opportunities,
uh-huh,
and
uh-huh,
that's long gone. But
yeah,
all that's gone online, but not much else has. you know Business brokers are better organized with CRM systems and things like this, but
yeah,
it's really still communications between people. um, I just had a client that I had a meeting with who's down in the New York City area, and he was interested in a business, and he talked with the broker, and he asked the broker just for very basic information. He wanted to know who the seller was and when he could meet the seller, and he wanted to know if the last year's tax returns had been filed. And then he didn't hear back from the broker for 10 days,
uh-huh,
just nothing.
oh,
He kept sending
but,
emails, he placed a phone call, sent a text message, nothing. And so he emailed me and he said, "What's going on?" And I said, "Oh, they're talking to somebody else, or they know that the business is overpriced, so they're trying to find a more, um, a buyer who's more willing
yeah,
to be taken
yeah,
advantage of or something." And then after 10 days, she finally responded to him. And so, I mean, what do you
oh,
do with customer service like that? She's the one
yeah,
representing the seller. There's not much the buyer can do. He has to deal with it if he wants a chance to buy the business. And that's
yeah,
the attitude that unfortunately some of the poorer brokers have. They feel like they've got the golden goose and people have to do it their way.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the typical commission there for selling?
You know, there
And,
are.
and is it advisable? Sorry, is it advisable to have like fixed fee, no commission, and low entry, so to attract more buyer? Sorry, more seller.
So there's a bunch of different ways that brokers charge. Um, when I had my business brokerage office open, I was charging 12% of business value and 6% of real estate value if I happened to sell a building at the same time. And
Right.
I hear a lot of business brokers charge 10%. I know that most business brokers have a minimum fee.
Yeah.
So if they're selling a smaller business, there's that minimum charge. There are other variations. Most brokers who have a good reputation, have been around for a long time, will have some sort of engagement fee. So they'll charge an upfront fee for opening the file and doing all the initial work. When I was a business broker and people would kind of challenge my commission, they would say, "Oh, 12% is a lot." What I would do is I would explain to them that when they sell their house, there's a mortgage broker, and there's a property appraiser, and there's a real estate agent.
Yeah.
And the real estate agent finds the buyer, and the property appraiser determines the price, and the mortgage broker helps the buyer find the money. And in the world of business brokerage, I was doing all three of those roles. So when the
Yeah.
seller came to me, I was doing the evaluation to show them what it would likely sell for so that we could set a realistic asking price. Then I was finding the buyer. And then once we found the buyer, I mean, in some cases, I even wrote business plans for the buyer and then took them down to the bankers that I had relationships with to get the
Oh.
deals funded.
Yeah.
So I was kind of doing the role of the mortgage broker too. And so I would say, look, I'm doing all three of these jobs, which means I need to earn, what all three of those people would earn. And the other thing is that because it takes so long to become a competent broker, and you have to build up experience, and you have to have other people to lean on to learn from, and you have to do training. And I think before that, even, you have to have experience in sales, like business to business consultative type sales. You have to have some kind of background, which means that you know a bit about bookkeeping and accounting and finance. And so if you take a person with all of those skills, that's a 6-figure income person
That's right.
if they were going to go have a job somewhere. And so if you're only going to sell 5 or 6 businesses in an average year, maybe only 4, and if most businesses are selling for a couple $100,000 and you're going to be charging a 12% commission, and you have all of your overheads, in order to get that 6-figure income, you need to be charging 12%,
I see.
right? And the thing that is truly unfair about this model is that the people who have great businesses that people want to buy, they end up paying the commission, whereas people whose businesses are not so great, they'll take up the broker's time, but the business may not sell. And so
Yeah.
the successful sellers really are subsidizing, the work done on behalf of the people whose businesses aren't in such great demand.
Yeah. Right. Okay. I see.
Yeah. There are definitely issues with the business, and as far as it really is sort of a Wild West kind of business, because there's no overarching body that certifies or licenses people specifically for being a business broker. In most jurisdictions that have rules at all, they say that to sell a business, you need to have a real estate license. And that opens the door, in my opinion, to a bunch of other problems. This was the case where I live here. I had to hold and maintain a real estate license to be a business broker. And so I had to pay fees to the association. I had to pay for insurance, which specifically didn't cover me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had to pay for an errors and omissions policy, which specifically said that any transaction involving, any kind of demonstration of financial results was not covered.
Yeah.
And so I had to have another insurance policy that I paid for. And then I had to go and attend 2 full days of training every year where I learned about things like new roofing materials or new techniques in sealing basement leaks or changes to the condo owner legislation or things like this, which had nothing to do with me.
That's right.
But I still had to do it. And the big problem is that because the government said that business brokers had to have real estate licenses, there were real estate people who believed that they were therefore qualified to sell businesses.
Right.
And one of the things that would happen is I would meet people who wanted to sell their business, and they would say, you're charging 12%. My buddy who sold my house said he'll sell my business for 6%. And I would try to explain the differences in skills and everything. And some people, they look at the price, right? And then next thing you know, there's a big for sale sign in front of the person's business, and people assume it's closed. Sales start to go down. All of a sudden, then the business is closed, and all the value they built up, it disappears. To me, that's one of the saddest things that happens.
What's the best way to find out the multiply in valuation, like when you do business valuation?
Well, and again, this is where something
each
like
industry is different, but it's like
each industry is different, and this is where things like those courses from the IBBA would be really valuable.
We'll cover UK market as well.
Yeah, here's what happens is it's different by industry.
Yeah.
But they're also a little bit different by country in general. So let me give you an example. The multipliers are all based on pre-tax cash flow. And obviously, the tax rates in the United States are different than the tax rates in the UK or in Canada, right? And so what we observe in the market is that when I look in a database of largely American information, it might say that a certain business sells for about 2.3 times owner's discretionary cash flow. And when I'm looking at a Canadian business, I take that factor and I shrink it by a fifth. And so, because in general, small businesses in Canada sell for about 20% less of a factor than American ones. And it's because what's not being accounted for in that discretionary cash flow is the tax burden. And so people here are willing to pay less for a business because they don't get as much of that cash flow. So the same kind of factor would apply in the UK.
Right.
Okay. And so this is where the experience comes in, because eventually what will happen is, even though you work things out mathematically, you might end up with a certain number. And then you have to sit back and you look at that number and you ask yourself questions like, if I bought this business and it's got a cash flow of $100,000, and if I worked in this industry as a manager, I would earn 65 anyway as a salary. Is it really worth it for me to invest that amount of money to obtain an extra, $35,000 every year?
Mm.
And when you start to ask yourself questions like that, it can be very clear. Yes, no, no way. Right. And then you have to go back and you have to reconsider your assumptions. And I think that's part of the problem when we see businesses that are overpriced by double and these crazy things, is because somebody is applying some of these methodologies for evaluation, but they don't have the experience to really know how to consider the different factors for what makes sense and what doesn't. And they just say, look, my spreadsheet says this is what we're going to sell it for. And then they can't.
I see that especially with Amazon businesses, like Amazon store. It's just a high risk, and plus, like, they're asking for silly numbers in terms of multiply. Amazon can shut down your store anytime.
That's
so
right.
You pay XYZ amount, assuming you will recover that amount. I don't know. It's like still some people are crazy about it. So
well, and certain business types, you see certain crazy things. So one of the things that I consistently see is that simpler businesses that don't require a lot of language competency.
Yeah.
So, a dry cleaner, the corner store, some little restaurants, gas station. Um, what it means is that someone who's new to the country can run that
Ah.
business.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
and so they have more, it's worth more to them than it is to a local person. And so they're willing to pay more. And so the multiples in those kinds of businesses will get skewed up. And what's happening with the Amazon businesses is I think you've got this new generation of buyers who have this romantic idea that they can buy a business and earn big money while only working very few hours. And
Yeah.
they think that this is the avenue. And they probably don't have the breadth of business experience to understand the risks like the one you just mentioned. Amazon could close you down. I've met people online who've been very successful with selling something on Amazon to the point where Amazon sees that the results they're having, and then they get their own
Yeah.
Amazon private label product in that category
That's right. Yeah.
to compete with them, and all of a sudden their sales drop,
Mm.
right? And so the flood of people into that industry is causing the multiples to go up. There's a fellow in Australia. I had him on my YouTube channel. His name is Jared Krause. He actually had a podcast episode of his own where he was talking about this, that the multiples, and these businesses are sold on multiples of monthly profit because they
Uh-huh.
tend to grow so quickly, at least initially. The multiples have been growing. And so now people are paying, sometimes, it used to be they were paying about 27 times monthly profit, which works out to about 2.3 years, which is kind of the average for most small businesses. But now it's being pushed up above 30. Well, if you get to 36, what that means is that you're so confident in the stability of the business that if everything remained the same and constant, you would be happy waiting 3 years before you made any money. And in the
Wow.
world of the internet, we know that 3 years from now, everything will definitely be different,
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I see multipliers like that, I'm like, these are buyers who just don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. That's right. Right. If let's say, okay, one of the clients would like to sell his business, let's assume his restaurant, he would like to sell the restaurant, and we signed an agreement with him, and in when we do the number with him, we spot there is an opportunity, uh, and I waited till he get, let's say, an offer, and I will not represent the offer, or I'll tell him this is the offer, but I have another buyer for you, can pay little bit extra, less 1%, 2% extra. And that the second buyer is myself. So if there is any like breach of contract or conflict of interest here, it prevent me to do this type of deals.
Well, that is something you would have to specifically research there locally,
Right.
um, because then it comes down to licensing. So if you held an estate agent's license,
Yeah.
they would have a code of ethics and different rules about self dealing is what it's called,
Yeah.
um, and there would be certain disclosures you would have to make, and it could become quite cumbersome. And
Right.
so I'm not an expert on that, but
Yeah.
I know that you would have to be very careful to make sure that you didn't fall into violation of anything, because it doesn't matter how big the community is you're in. The community of business owners is always small.
That's right.
In any community, it's like less than 10% of the people own everything, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so news about something to do with your reputation spreads very
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah.
Once it gets down to the Rotary Club or the Kiwanis Club or the local, dinner club in downtown, and people are spreading that, then everyone in the community is going to know. And this is the number one thing that business brokers have to protect in their
Yeah.
industry is their reputation.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay. So in terms of like business and procedure for business brokerages, you're recommending like to check with BB and IBB?
Yep, BBP Inc., Business Brokerage
Oh,
Press,
okay.
and
BB.
the IBBA, the International Business Brokers Association, and
Right.
they have a certification program. This is where you can earn a designation called the CBI, and this
How long will it take that?
you have to attend several of their conferences to do classes in a live classroom setting. I know that some of the classes are offered online now.
Oh, good.
When
Okay.
I did it, it took me about 2 years to attend enough conferences to get all my credits and write the exam.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And if this can be shareable later on, like if the franchisee, I don't think that's something we have to deal with the IBB.
Um, if you became big enough, you could certainly create your own program, and
Yeah.
that's what Sunbelt did eventually. After I left, they created their own training program for their own agents, and I think part of the reason why is because of the length of time it took for people to earn the CBI designation. And
Right.
so I've met a few people online who went through the Sunbelt program, and I think that was an online program. And you know, I think, Ali, what you have to do is you have to decide: am I willing to build a new business as a franchise model in an industry that I don't have a lot of experience in yet, and
Yeah.
try to hire the skills needed to make this roll out, or do you want to actually work as a business transfer agent for a while to figure some of these things out before you build this thing?
Oh, I see. Okay. Right.
Or at
That's,
the very least,
yeah,
get some partners or other people involved who've been in this business for a while.
that's valuable advice there. Thank you
Yeah.
for that. Yep. Right. Okay, that's great.
Anything else you
Wonderful.
want to cover?
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's been long enough. Thank you
Okay.
very much for your time.
Well, it's good to meet you, Ali, and I'm glad that you're in the audience, and I'm happy that I was able to speak with you today. And maybe we can meet up if I'm ever over in the UK sometime soon.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Bye bye.
Yes. Bye bye.